Hello guys, and welcome to another update video on things going on with the game The Balance. Was talking last video about how we were going to be creating a new tree model that is actually well within our boundaries. It's not too high in polygon count, it looks well enough, all those different things. So this video might be one of the more shorter ones again. But now that we've got this under control, we might start to be able to start picking up the pace more and get more design elements done with the environment now that I finally found the right groove to create better tree geometry and more stylish and realistic tree geometry, because I'm not really going for photorealism in the game. I'm going for close-ish realism and keeping it a little bit more stylized in that way. I feel like if I went too real, then the life is infectious is going to look too weird with these highly realistic things going on. If we keep it more to a stylized parameter, we'll have something that is more pleasing to the eye and will also not take players too far out of the video game. Because I don't know if you're like me, but there's a lot of times when I'm playing a game where I'll notice something that kind of breaks that realism when they're going for something super realistic, and then I find something that just kind of pulls me out of that realism and pulls me back into, oh, I'm playing a game. This isn't actually real things going on. Because that's just going to cause a lot more stress on actually making sure geometry looks right and textures look perfect and all these things. It's better for me, being the only person working on the project right now, to just start with something of a baseline where we get a really nice stylized photo realistic texture and geometry, and all that will start to make more sense when we actually start creating textures for it. Right now, since we're only working on getting the base models done, it's hard to really see where this stylized approach is coming. But hope you guys are staying with it, and we'll get there. We're getting there. Bit by bit, we're getting there. We're getting there. So let's go back into talking about the actual model. We have the finalized tree model. I'm going to make multiple variations of this. I found a way of just being able to create the model through a base cube and extruding it out from there created a lot better geometry and something that had a lot more manageable faces. If you see down in the lower corner, it says our face count, our vert count, and all this stuff is actually where I want it to be, because our face count is just around 3,000 polygons, and polygons being faces as well. We all know what a polygon is. It's a four-sided shape and things like that. So our face count is sitting really nice at 3,000. 3,000 for a mesh when we're looking at it really up close is going to be perfect for the game, because having multiple trees in the location that I'm wanting at the end of the tutorial level is going to be just fine. Having roughly, like, say, we could have like 35 of these trees and 35 different versions of this tree at roughly 3,000 polygons when the player is really up close to the edge of the tree line. That's going to be perfect. That'll be really good. And then we can rely on some engine parameters and some decimation of the geometry for our LODs, or our level of details, because we want, as we get farther away from this tree in the game, we want the face count to start going lower. And there's ways to accomplish that through the Unreal Engine that will help us make sure that happens. So at 3,000 polygons, roughly, we're going to be really good to have a lot of nice, smooth optimization, because then anybody will be able to hop into this game, because I really got to make sure that this game will work on the lowest quality computer, or a console for that fact. Even though consoles have really upped their game and they're really nice now, especially with the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 having amazing graphic potential, I still want to make sure that they run for the base console user as well as for a high-end PC user as well, because we all know a lot of PC computers or PC gamers have more than just one graphics card at their disposal or a 4K monitor at their disposal. They have a lot more stuff that they're going to be using versus a console user who is going to just maybe just have their console and an HD TV. So we got to make sure that it's balanced for both ends of a player market. Even though I don't know if this game will get released on consoles, but at that point, then I have to make sure the game is stable enough for both ends of computer users, because I want to make sure that a gamer who has an amazing desktop with 2080 Ti graphics card is able to have a great experience, as well as the gamer who has maybe just the 1060 graphics card or lower be able to have just as well of a fun and amazing experience as the player who has the higher graphics engine. Yes, there might be changes in players. We always see that in games. Some players get to see better things versus other players. That is going to be the goal with this tree right here. And we're going to see that when we go into edit mode. We can look at the geometry now, and this is some very clean, if I might not say sexy, topology. I love it when my topology looks really good and looks smooth like this, because what I can do now when I go into texturing everything, I can easily see where I'm going to make my joints now. I can just go right here and understand that this edge line right there is going to be the cutoff point for this whole branch. And we can see, like right now, I just selected one edge, and that selected a great center line for all of this mesh. Like that right there would be a great line for a lot of these branches. And I can just go around when I get to modeling out all this and just see that with just selecting a few lines here and there, I have gotten a perfect center line for a lot of my geometry. Now I won't have that many center lines going on down here. I'm going to make sure that we do a good cylinder UV. If a lot of you don't know a lot about UVs and what a UV is, I like to think of it as, right now we are seeing the model, the shape of the tree. There are two other aspects that create every object you see in a video game. Even in movies, you see these three things. You see the mesh, the base model, the base object, and then you see the texture, what the object looks like, the colors of it, the normal maps, all these things that create the actual appearance that the end user gets. That could be the gamer, the movie watcher, the TV watcher, anybody that is seeing the end result is considered the end user. And they are mainly going to see the base mesh and the textures. Whereas the designer, the people who have created it, we have to actually create something that makes the textures and the base mesh come together. So to do that, we create what is called the UV. So that's where we have all the lines selected. I unselected them like a dope. Let's grab them all back in there again. So that's where you see all these lines that I have highlighted. They'll become seams for this actual tree. A seam being, whoop, whoop, come on, give, no, it's not doing it. It's not doing it. Come on, give me, fine, go there. Fine, be picky. A seam being, we're going to see it right here. So since I started this off of a cube, we have the basic map of a cube. Let me go ahead and pull up an actual cube so that we can talk about that, because that'll be an easy object to explain. So we're just going to add a cube. And here's our cube. So We have our cube, and say we're going to start adding textures onto this cube. Well, when we're actually looking at the textures, you can see now that we have faces that make up the cube. We have these are our faces. This is what determines the count of the polygon count and all those things. Polygon count for a cube is 6 faces because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So with those 6 faces, you can see them being projected over here in what is called our UV map. The UV map simply being the actual skin of the base mesh. The skin will then become the actual texture. Just like my own skin, I have for humans, we have our bones and our muscles. The bones and the muscles create the base mesh. Then our actual skin is multiple layers that builds up and has the coloration, hairs coming out, little tiny imperfections. We all have that, and that is what the UV map is. It is the skin without the coloring to it. So we have to make sure that when we create objects, that we create them with the ability to have clean UVs. And usually that's called creating clean topology on an object. So for instance, on the tree, we have to have clean topology on the tree. And that means not having shapes or faces that are considered n-gons or non-polygonal shapes. Pretty much any face that has more than 4 sides to it. And I can actually show you one that we have an issue with right down here. So this is a non-polygonal shape. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges. See? We have 5 edges there, and in a game, having 5 edges right here is actually going to cause a lot of issues when adding the textures and rendering it out and things like that. It's going to start to look very weird because the texture is going to bend smoothly over on the lefts and right where you see these squares over here. It's going to bend smoothly there, but then when it gets to this shape, it's going to have a harder time processing it. It's going to cause more processing errors, and it's going to cause the entire shape to look funky in this one point. We could have the texture stretch, and we just don't want that. So, well, quick and easy to fix that, we just take what is called the knife tool, or a lot of programs have it also as the multi-cut tool in Maya. We just want to take it and cut a clean line across, which just created 2 new faces. See, we created a rhombus. That is the best way to fix non-polygonal shapes, is creating rhombuses sometimes. Because if you can create a rhombus right across the shape, then you know your geometry was fine. You don't have to fix your geometry. If you had to create a lot more of a complex shape right here to fix your geometry, then there was something going on, and your non-polygon could actually be the case of having faces that are folding in on each other, creating a non-polygon. I've had that happen where the face looks like this to me, but in reality, it's folded under and it's connecting underneath and creating these weird edges on the inside of our geometry. You don't want that. So if you can create an easy rhombus to change it, then you know your geometry, your faces are intersecting each other. Or even you could have moments where you have like itty bitty faces all intersecting in one point. And that's why sometimes you'll use the knife tool and you'll only be able to cut so far. And that's going to be because you have a face hidden within a face, within a face, within a face. And it's just a nightmare at that point. And you just got to delete that whole section and re-topologize that entire area. But with an easy rhombus cut, you're golden. It's amazing. It's beautiful. You know. Um, so we can go around and you can see I do have a few of those. They happen a lot of times when you're just creating a geometry and you choose to have things happen where, in this case, I ran a tool that helps me to add the topology that I need, add the number of faces to smooth it out. It happens a lot when you, hold up, I see another one right here. I'm just going around fixing them, looking for them all. It happens a lot when you go to use tools like the bevel tool when you're trying to make something that has a point be smooth. You tend to have um, non-polygons appear during a bevel technique. So like you saw with my hands, so you have this curve and you go to bevel it and you go to create something that's now rounded like that. Well, a lot of the times you can have it happen where you get this nice perfect bevel. You can go from here to there and it's great. Or you can have it happen where it goes from there to there. This right here would create a non-polygonal shape because you have something where the faces on the side will connect and they'll connect weirdly and they'll break, and you just don't want that. And sometimes we just kind of have to deal with it. It's just where we are with the technology nowadays is that non-gons or non-polygonal shapes just happen a lot during your creation of an object. It's I've never had a industry professional that I've spoken to or my professors. A lot of people just sit there and just tell me, yeah, they happen. You have to be aware of them. You have to know how to find them, how to get rid of them, and just be ready for it because it's gonna happen when you try. And a lot of the times it's when you're trying to cut corners and make something happen faster than it needs to. And that's probably what happened here is I could have gone a little too fast trying to model out my shape. But knowing that I did something that was going to cause them allows me to know exactly where they're going to happen. Because as you can see, I'm kind of just naturally just going to these points. I'm not actively searching through them, grabbing a telescope, anything like that. I just know they're there. I'm just going straight to them, finding them, and being like, oh, okay, yep, it was going to be right here. Whoops. It was just going to be there, and just got to make that cut. After a while, and just after practice and practice of doing it, you'll start to understand that you need to check for it, and you'll start to realize where they are in your head, and just like, bam, I've got an N-gon. I just know I do. Let's look at the places that I know they're going to happen a lot, which are mostly places like, ooh, this is going to be a fun one because we can see right here, there. So we do have a fun N-gon. So N-gons like to appear during bends and joints in geometry. This was a bend in the geometry to a branch. So the geometry had to bend out to make this intersection, and it tried to smooth it out as best as the computer knew how. But as you can see, we have an issue here. This isn't too bad of an issue. Occasional triangles in your geometry is okay when used properly, though. For instance, you see up here we have a triangle. The triangle being, in architecture, the strongest shape. In geometry and 3D modeling in video games, the triangle isn't the strongest shape. The square is. But a triangle can be used sparingly when done correctly. For instance, right here where you see a triangle, to create a proper edge and a proper bend around the shape. Because sometimes squares can't bend, they can't get smooth, they can't really change their shape. They're stuck at being either pulled here, pulled there, pulled here, and there. And sometimes that's going to cause too many issues for the square to do. So the computer makes a triangle there because the triangle can help pick up the bend that the square can't. So that is what we're going to have to do here is instead of creating the rhombus, we're going to have to make the best use of a triangle, which in my opinion, a lot of the times if you're going to create a cut where you're going to be left with a triangle and a square, make the triangle be in a spot that's going to be more hidden from the player's eye. If I made the triangle here, that could work and it would allow for this geometry to smooth across. And, I might actually go that route, make the triangle be right here because the player could see the top of this tree branch, but the side of the tree branch, it's better to see that triangle shape there helping to continue the natural curve that I wanted with the branch. Again, we have it again here. I'm going to follow my same rule. I'm wanting to make sure that we have a natural curve for the branch. And that's kind of how you have to handle n-gons. And I just know where they are. I have developed such a good eye for just finding them and being aware of what they look like and what they do to my geometry. Uh-oh, this one's being fun. So what we have going on here is I'm going to have to fix this and I'll do this another time off video. But what we have going on is I want to go from there all the way to here. But you see, it wants to cut across this shape, not this shape. And it's just the program not knowing what I'm doing because the knife tool is trying to figure it out, but it doesn't know what it's doing. It just doesn't. So that's an issue where my geometry, when I smoothed it out, created more of a curve that fit into that geometry. Nothing bad, nothing I can't fix. It's just something I have to be aware of when designing. And I was prepared for it. Just wasn't expecting to find it. I was hoping that I gave each branch enough ample room to curve out and to create its curves. But it seems like I didn't. So I'll have to fix that. No big deal. It's a manageable error. Everything is when it comes to game design. Everything is just a manageable error that you have to just figure out how to solve. I mean, that's kind of why I like games and designing games is it's all about problem solving, and I kind of like to problem solve all of my errors that are happening, and I like finding them. I like fixing them, and it's just fun. It's relaxing. I can just sit here for hours just working on my geometry, fixing it up, making it look pretty. And see, this is gonna be weird. This is considered an n-gon, and so we're gonna follow the rule, follow the natural curve of the geometry, which is to create a tiny triangle. It's always best to make the triangles the smallest as possible. You don't want them to be huge because if they're too huge, then they're going to cause major issues in the overall look and appearance of your shape. So, tips for anybody who wants to create 3D models themselves, want to learn how to do these things. I know I don't really go into too many details about how I'm actually designing these or actually showing you guys the full process on every single one that I make. If you guys do want that more, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll start doing that. I'll start adding longer videos and start making sure that I can add in these longer videos of me just 3D modeling for 30 minutes. I don't know if anybody can stick around to me talking for like more than 30 minutes, but if you guys can handle it, maybe we'll go for longer. And yeah, so I think I got most of the endgons that I know of and that I could see in this whole area. Let's go look down here. Let's give this area a look because I think most of my endgons only happened in that area. Yeah. Okay, so just gotta make sure because I see another location. I forgot to check the bottom of my shape. A lot of people forget to check the bottom. It's very hard to remember that I created a shape that has multiple sides to it. A lot of the times, though, later on, I might just end up deleting all these bottom faces because that's a great way for me to eliminate endgons and eliminate polygons because the amount of faces that we see on the bottom of these roots, we can get rid of them and cut out, 50 to 100 faces easily by doing that. And the only reason we do that is because you guys are never going to see them. When you're playing the game, you're never going to notice it. You're never even going to notice you ever wanted them. When they're gone, and you could care less while you're playing the game because they just were never even a thought for you being the player. So, fun things that designers do to the models that you see in the game. They take care of making sure that you don't see things that you need to see. That's why a lot of the times I know some players will end up finding themselves behind their models or behind the game. What is it doing? It's doing something weird. I think it was just because of that. They'll find themselves behind a model and they'll see something that they weren't supposed to see, or they'll be in an area where they're clipping through everything. See, this is a point where we have an issue with the geometry. Something's going on with this shape to make the knife tool not want to cut cleanly across it. And that could be something as simple as the program is wanting to create a different form of geometry. This is a point where, yes, triangles were the way to fix it. And I actually quite like that. I can live with that. I can live with those triangles there. I can handle that because what that pretty much just did for me is allowed for what I said, the natural curve in this area to be just fine and intact and not be ruined. And you can also see the reason why I figured that out is the program didn't see these as two rhombuses. It saw these as three shapes because the geometry doesn't continue in that way. It doesn't continue like this. It continues forward to the player. It continues where we see these ridges of the roots. You have that bump and that bump, but nothing curving there. This is curving down. So it wanted to continue this line of geometry and allow curve to happen there. Totally fine. We can live with it. It'll look great. And yeah, so other than needing to fix this last spot, I believe I got all the endgons. Helped you guys to learn a little bit more about games. I hope you guys like the shape of this tree. It's very much what I wanted. Something that looked like the trees in the Amazon forest. I came up with a better idea of how these trees are going to look. In the Amazon forest, you have these giant trees and they have these big roots that come down into the ground. And these trees actually move across the forest floor. They actually do that because they're trying to find water in the rainforest. So their roots pull them towards the water running underground. So They're not really pulling themselves because they're trying to catch light. They're already so high up and their leaves are already touching all the light, but they're pulling themselves towards the water source. And I want these trees to feel like that too. I want them to feel like they're a living tree because life is an infection. That's the main point about this game is life is out of control. So plants need to be out of control. Plants need to have their own gimmicky things that they're doing. So, for instance, these trees are going to be migrating around the world. With that said, though, that then creates the idea of when the player is entering locations, if they ever return to a location, that location needs to be different in some way. The trees need to have moved in a different way to open up a new path, which might be doable depending on how I end up programming the game and creating the levels and progressions. So, things to think about, things that are going on in this big brain of mine. Well, semi big, mainly big. I don't know. Yeah, I'm rambling now. With that said, I'll update you guys next week and give you another look at the trees. I might be going into the smaller features of the tutorial level, going into the grass and bushes, little tiny plants, maybe a flower. Who knows? We'll see where we are next week when we're looking at this again. But with that said, feel free, comment, like this video, subscribe to the channel for more updates, and I'll see you guys next time.